When I saw Jessica loading the television box into her SUV, something inside me went dark. It wasn't rage, it wasn't surprise. It was something worse. It was the cold silence of someone who finally understood that everything they feared was true. It was my 70th birthday. 70 years of life. 70 years of being a mother, a grandmother, a widow, an invisible woman. And there I was, standing in the doorway of my apartment, watching my daughter-in-law take away the gift my grandchildren had bought for me. Mia and Noah had worked for months, 16 and 14 years old, still children. Mia babysat on weekends. Noah washed cars at the strip mall parking lot. The two of them saved every single dollar with one idea in mind: to give their grandmother an $8,000 television. $8,000. Not because I needed it, but because they wanted to see me happy. When they pulled it out of the truck and brought it into the living room, I cried. I couldn't help it. Mia hugged me so hard I felt her heart beating against my chest. Noah, that shy boy who almost never speaks, whispered in my ear, "It's so you can watch your shows on the big screen, Grandma, so you don't have to strain your eyes." I hugged them both. I hugged them as if the world were ending, because in that moment, they were my whole world. Robert, my son, was sitting on the sofa with an uncomfortable smile. He has always been like that. Uncomfortable. Quiet. A man who learned to live in the shadows of his own home. He said nothing when the kids unwrapped the gift. He just nodded. He just smiled the way people smile in family photos that no one wants to take. Jessica was in the kitchen. I heard her talking on the phone. Her voice has always been like that. Loud, sure, full of that confidence only people who have never had to apologize for anything possess. When she hung up, she walked into the living room. She looked at the television. She looked at the kids. She looked at me. And then she said, "Eleanor, let me take it. You don't need one of those at your age. We'll buy a simple one for your bedroom." Silence. Mia stopped smiling. Noah looked down. Robert cleared his throat but said nothing. He never says anything. I just looked at her. I looked at her the way you look at someone who has just crossed an invisible line. A line I had drawn in my mind years ago but had never defended. Jessica didn't wait for an answer. She never waits for an answer. She called Robert with a wave of her hand, and between the two of them, they began to lift the box. The kids tried to protest, but she silenced them with that look mothers use when they don't want arguments. That look that says, "We'll talk later." I stayed there, standing, immobile, watching them load my gift toward the door, watching my grandkids bite their lips to keep from crying, watching Robert avoid my eyes. When they got to the car, Jessica opened the trunk and arranged the box carefully, too carefully, like someone storing something valuable, something she already considers hers. She closed the trunk and turned toward me. I was in the building's entryway. She smiled. That smile she had shown me for 8 years. That smile that says, "There is nothing you can do." But this time, something was different. This time, I smiled too. I didn't say anything. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just smiled. And in that instant, something changed inside me. Something that had been asleep for decades woke up. Something cold. Something calculating. Something that had learned to survive in silence. Jessica closed the car door and got into the driver's seat. Robert got in the other side. The kids stayed with me in the entrance. Mia had red eyes. Noah was clenching his fists. The car started. The taillights moved away down the street. And I stayed there, with my grandkids by my side, feeling the cold night air hit my face. Mia took my hand. "Grandma, I'm sorry. We wanted it to be for you." I squeezed her hand. "I know, sweetheart. I know." Noah kicked a stone on the ground. "Mom always does the same thing. Always. Always." That word stayed floating in my head as we walked up the stairs to my apartment. Always. As if this were normal. As if I should get used to it. As if my place in this family was to be the one who yields, the one who stays silent, the one who smiles even though she is dying inside. We entered the apartment. The kids sat on the sofa. I went to the kitchen and made hot cocoa. I always do it when they come over. It's our ritual. But this time my hands were shaking while I held the pot. It wasn't fear. It was something else. It was that sensation you get when you know something is going to change. When you know you've reached the limit. When you know that the next time someone crosses that line, you're going to be ready. I served them the cocoa. The three of us sat in silence. Mia looked at her hands. Noah looked at the wall where the television should have been. I looked at the window. Outside, the city glowed with yellow and white lights. Life went on. People went on. Everything went on except me. Because I had just stopped. I had just made a decision. Jessica didn't know it yet. Robert didn't know it. Nobody knew it. But I did. I knew this wasn't going to stay like this. I knew something inside me had just broken. And when something breaks after 70 years of enduring, it doesn't get fixed. It transforms. I got up and went to my room. I opened the drawer of my dresser. There, between old handkerchiefs and yellowing letters, was the envelope. The envelope I had saved 3 months ago. The envelope that contained papers, documents, proof. Proof of everything Jessica didn't know I knew. I took it out. I opened it. I read the names, the dates, the figures. Everything was there. Everything I had been compiling in silence, while she believed I was a harmless old woman. I closed the envelope. I put it away again. But this time I didn't put it in the same place. This time I put it in my purse. Because I knew I was going to need it soon. I went back to the living room. The kids were still there. Mia looked up. "Are you okay, Grandma?" I smiled. This time it was a real smile. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm okay." And it was true. For the first time in years, I was okay. Because I had finally stopped being afraid. I had finally stopped waiting for things to change on their own. I had finally understood that if I wanted justice, I had to create it myself. That night, after the kids left, I sat in my armchair and looked at the empty space where my television should have been. I looked at that space like someone looking at an open wound, but I didn't feel pain. I felt clarity. I felt purpose. Because they didn't know I already had everything ready. They didn't know that for months I had been preparing something. They didn't know the television wasn't the end of this story. It was just the beginning. The first time I met Jessica was on a Tuesday in April. 8 years ago, Robert arrived home with her hanging off his arm, as if she were a trophy. She wore a wine-colored dress and high heels that clicked against the floor of my living room. She smiled too much. She talked too much. She laughed too loud. I made coffee. We sat at the kitchen table. Robert couldn't stop looking at her, as if he had just discovered fire. Jessica told me she worked at an advertising agency, that she had a condo on the north side, that she traveled often, that her family was from the capital. Everything sounded perfect. Too perfect. But I smiled. I nodded. I said she seemed charming. Because that is what mothers do. We smile even though inside we feel something doesn't fit. 6 months later, they got married. It was a small wedding. Jessica insisted it be intimate, only close family. I paid for the wedding dress. She chose one that cost $4,000. When I asked if it wasn't too expensive, she looked at me as if I had said something offensive. "Eleanor, you only get married once. You have to do it right." I didn't say anything. I paid for the dress. I paid for the flowers. I paid for part of the venue. Robert didn't earn much back then. Neither did Jessica. But she had that ability to make everything seem necessary, urgent, essential. After the wedding, things changed. At first, it was small details. Jessica stopped coming to visit me on Sundays. Then Robert started canceling our lunches. Then they stopped answering my calls with the same frequency. I understood. Or at least that's what I told myself. They were newlyweds. They needed space. They needed to build their own life. But then the grandkids arrived. Mia was born first. When I saw her for the first time in the hospital, something inside me rebuilt itself. That little girl had my late husband's eyes. She had his way of looking, curious, alert, alive. I wanted to be there all the time. I wanted to help. I wanted to hold her. I wanted to be the grandmother I always dreamed of being. Jessica had other plans. "Eleanor, I appreciate the thought, but I need to establish routines with the baby. Maybe you can visit us Thursday afternoons. 1 hour. no more. 1 hour. Thursdays. I accepted. Because I didn't want to cause problems. Because I didn't want to be that intrusive mother-in-law everyone complains about. Because I believed that with time, things would improve. They didn't improve. When Noah was born 2 years later, the rules became stricter. Jessica made a schedule. Allowed days. Things I could or could not do with my grandchildren. I couldn't give them candy. I couldn't take them to the park without her permission. I couldn't have them for sleepovers. I couldn't buy them clothes without consulting her first. Robert just nodded, always nodding, always on her side, always with that look of apology that never turned into words. The years passed like that. I visited my grandkids during established hours. I saw them grow through controlled windows of time. 1 hour on Thursdays, 2 hours on Sundays, if Jessica was in a good mood. But the kids loved me. That Jessica couldn't control. Mia hugged me every time I arrived. Noah asked me to tell him stories about when Robert was a boy. They sought me out. They needed me. And Jessica didn't like that. I started noticing it in her comments. Little poison phrases disguised as concern. Eleanor, the kids say you give them cookies before dinner. That ruins their appetite. Eleanor, Mia says you told her that when you were young you worked cleaning houses. I don't want the kids to think that's okay. Eleanor, I think you're spoiling Noah. He needs discipline, not hugs all the time. Each phrase was a silent blow. Each comment was a way of telling me I was doing everything wrong, that my way of loving was incorrect, that my presence was more a problem than a gift. I stayed silent. I always stayed silent, because I was afraid of losing my grandkids. I was afraid that if I confronted Jessica, she would convince Robert to keep them away from me completely. So I became the invisible grandmother, the one who arrives in silence, the one who leaves without making noise, the one who never contradicts, the one who always smiles even though inside she is bleeding. 3 years ago, Robert lost his job. It was a difficult time. They went 6 months without stable income. Jessica had to accept a lesser position at another firm. The kids had to change schools. I offered them help. I gave them money. $3,000 from my savings. Money I had saved for years, cleaning houses, caring for the elderly, doing jobs Jessica considered undignified. Robert cried when I gave it to him. He hugged me. He told me I was the best mother in the world, that he would pay me back every cent. Jessica just took the money and said, "Thanks, Eleanor. This helps us." They never paid me back anything. They never mentioned that money again. As if it had never existed. As if I had never sacrificed years of my life to save it. But I didn't say anything. Because that was me. The one who gives without expecting. The one who loves without conditions. The one who sacrifices in silence. Until I stopped being her. The change started 6 months ago. It was a Sunday afternoon. I had gone to visit them. Jessica was on the phone. She was talking loudly. I was in the kitchen making juice for the kids when I heard her. "Yes, Mom, she's unbearable, always here, always wanting to give her opinion. I don't know when she's going to understand that we don't need her anymore." I froze. The glass I was holding shook in my hand. Robert is too soft. He doesn't dare say anything to her. But I'm tired. We need our space. We need her to understand she's not welcome all the time anymore. My legs went weak. I sat on a kitchen chair. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. Jessica kept talking. She kept laughing. She kept destroying 8 years of silence I had endured with dignity. When she hung up, she came into the kitchen. She saw me sitting there. She smiled. "The juice is ready, Eleanor." I nodded. I served the juice. I gave it to the kids. I stayed 1 hour more. And then I left. But something had changed. That night I couldn't sleep. Jessica's words repeated in my head like a broken record. Unbearable. We don't need her. She's not welcome anymore. I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since my husband died 12 years ago. I cried for everything I had kept quiet. For all the times I swallowed humiliations. For all the moments I sacrificed my dignity to keep the peace. But when I finished crying, something else arrived. Clarity. Strength. Decision. I got out of bed. I went to my desk. I took out a notebook. And I started to write. I wrote down every humiliation, every hurtful comment, every moment Jessica had made me feel small. Every time Robert had looked the other way. I wrote dates. I wrote names. I wrote amounts of money I had given and never recovered. And then I started to investigate. I looked in old boxes. I found receipts for bank transfers. I found text messages I had saved without knowing why. I found emails. I discovered that the money I had sent for the kids' school supplies had been used for a weekend at the beach. I discovered that Jessica had told her family I was a burden, that I was senile, that they needed to put me in a home soon. I discovered there were plans. Plans that didn't include me. Plans where my apartment, the apartment I bought with the sweat of 30 years of work, would be sold to pay their debts. I found everything, and I saved everything. For 6 months I investigated in silence. I smiled when I visited. I nodded when Jessica spoke. I hugged my grandkids as if nothing was happening. But inside, I was building something. I was building justice. And then my 70th birthday arrived. My grandkids arrived with that $8,000 television. Jessica arrived with her fake smile and barely disguised contempt. And the moment arrived when I finally understood I had nothing left to lose. Because when they take everything from you, including your dignity, the only thing you have left is the truth. And I had a lot of truth saved up. 3 days after the television incident, I received a message from Mia. It was early in the morning. I was drinking coffee in my small kitchen when the phone vibrated on the table. "Grandma, can I come see you today after school? I need to talk to you." I replied immediately. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll be waiting." She arrived at 4 in the afternoon. Her eyes were red. She sat on my sofa and started to cry before I could ask her what was wrong. I hugged her. I said nothing. I just held her while her body shook against mine. When she could finally speak, she told me everything. She told me Jessica had installed the television in her mother's house, that when she and Noah protested, her mother yelled at them. She told them they were ungrateful, that she knew better than them what I needed. She told us you are too old to appreciate a television like that it would be a waste, that her mom would use it more. Mia sobbed. "Grandma, we worked so hard. I babysat kids who cried all day. Noah got up at 6 in the morning on Saturdays to wash cars in the cold. It was all for you, only for you." I felt something twist inside my chest. It wasn't pain, it was fury. A cold, calculating fury that had been growing for months. But I didn't show it to Mia. I couldn't. She needed comfort, not revenge. "My love," I told her while stroking her hair, "what you two did for me was beautiful. The television doesn't matter. What matters is that you love me. And I love you girls more than anything in this world." "But it's not fair," she cried. "Nothing Mom does is fair to you." Those words stayed floating in the air. Nothing is fair. Mia left an hour later. I made her favorite hot cocoa. I gave her cookies. I hugged her at the door until she stopped shaking. When she left, I sat in my armchair and looked at the empty wall where my television should have been. And then I made a decision. It was time to stop observing. It was time to act. The next day, I dialed a number I had saved for 2 months. It was the number of Arthur Henderson, the retired lawyer who lived in the 3rd-floor apartment. We had known each other for years. He had always been kind to me, polite, respectful. What Jessica didn't know was that Arthur owed me a favor, a big favor. 5 years ago, his daughter had arrived in the city fleeing a violent marriage. She arrived with 2 small children and no money. Arthur was desperate. He didn't have room to house them. Hotels were expensive. Shelters were full. I offered him my apartment. I stayed 2 months sleeping at a friend's house while Arthur's daughter recovered. I didn't charge him anything. I didn't ask for anything in return. I just gave her a safe space to heal. Arthur never forgot it. Every time we saw each other in the hallway, he told me, "Eleanor, if you ever need anything at all, just ask." That day had arrived. We met at a coffee shop near the building. Arthur arrived punctual, as always. We sat by the window. I ordered tea. He ordered black coffee. "Eleanor," he said with a warm smile, "it's a pleasure to see you. What can I do for you?" I took a deep breath, and then I told him everything. I told him about Jessica, about the humiliations, about the money I had lent and never recovered, about the plans I had discovered to sell my apartment, about the television. Arthur listened in silence. His face hardened with every word. When I finished, he stayed quiet for a moment. Then he took a notepad out of his pocket. I need you to give me exact dates, amounts of money, names of witnesses if there are any proof you have. I took an envelope out of my purse. Inside were copies of bank transfers, screenshots of messages, printed emails. Arthur reviewed everything carefully. His expression became more serious with every document. "This is enough to start," he said finally. "But we need more. We need proof of their intentions. We need recordings. We need documentation that they are planning to appropriate your property." "How do I get that?" I asked. Arthur leaned forward. "Do you trust me?" I nodded. "Then let me help you. I know someone. A private investigator. Discreet. Efficient. He can get information that we can't." I felt a chill. This was becoming real. This was no longer just contained rage. This was action. "How much does it cost?" I asked. $2,000. Maybe $3,000, depending on how long we take. I had that money. I had it saved for emergencies. And this was an emergency. An emergency of dignity. "Do it," I said. Arthur nodded. "There is something else I need you to know. Eleanor, if we go forward with this, there is no turning back. Once we start compiling evidence, once we confront Jessica legally, your relationship with your son may change forever." I had already thought about that. I had spent entire nights thinking about that, but every time I reached the same conclusion. "Robert decided years ago whose side he's on," I said. "I'm just deciding to stop being invisible." Arthur smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a smile of respect, of understanding. "Then let's begin." The next 2 months were strange. On the outside, everything remained the same. I visited my grandkids during the allowed times. I smiled when Jessica spoke. I nodded when Robert told boring stories about his job. But inside, I was building a case. I was building a bomb. The investigator Arthur hired was named Mike. He was a man of about 40, quiet, with eyes that seemed to see everything. We met once at the coffee shop. He explained how everything would work. "I'm going to follow Jessica for 3 weeks. I'm going to document her movements. I'm going to check her social media. I'm going to look for any evidence of fraud, embezzlement, or conspiracy." "And if you don't find anything?" I asked. Mike smiled. "There is always something. People like her always leave tracks." He was right. 2 weeks later, Mike called me. His voice sounded different. Excited. "I need you to come to my office. I found something." I went that same afternoon. Mike's office was in an old building downtown. I walked up 3 flights of stairs that creaked. I knocked on the door. He opened immediately. Inside was a table full of papers, photographs, and a laptop. "Sit down," he said. Saturday, my heart was beating so hard I could hear it. Mike opened the laptop. He showed me a series of screenshots. They were WhatsApp conversations. Conversations between Jessica and her mother. I started reading. "I already convinced Robert that it's better to sell the old lady's apartment. He says it's in a good area. We can get at least $120,000. And her, what does she say? She doesn't know anything yet. Robert doesn't dare tell her. But I already spoke to a real estate agent. As soon as she signs the power of attorney, we sell. And if she doesn't sign, we'll convince her. We'll tell her it's for her own good, that she needs to be in a smaller place, safer. I already found a nursing home that costs $1,000 a month. With what we get from the apartment, we can pay for 3 years and keep the rest." I felt the air escaping from my lungs. I read those words again and again. $120,000. Nursing home, power of attorney. They were planning to rob me. They were planning to lock me up. They were planning to erase me from my own life. "There's more," said Mike. He showed me bank statements. Statements showing that the money I had sent for the grandkids had been diverted. $3,000 I gave when Robert lost his job. Another $2,000 I lent for car repairs. $1,500 for school supplies. Nothing had gone where they told me. Everything had gone to vacations, to expensive restaurants, to designer clothes. They had robbed me. For years. With a smile on their faces. "Are you okay?" asked Mike. I wasn't okay. I felt like the world had flipped upside down. I felt that everything I thought I knew about my family had been a lie. But I nodded. Because there was no longer room for sadness. Only for action. "Is this enough?" I asked. "More than enough," responded Mike. "With this, we can prove intent to defraud, conspiracy to commit financial abuse against an elderly person, misappropriation of funds. You have a solid case. What's next?" "That depends on you, Eleanor. Do you want to press criminal charges? Do you just want to protect your assets? Do you want revenge?" I thought for a moment. I thought about Mia and Noah. I thought about all the times Jessica had humiliated me. I thought about Robert looking the other way. "I want justice," I said, "but not yet. First, I want them to know what it feels like. I want them to experience what I experienced for years." Mike nodded slowly. "You have a plan." I smiled. For the first time in months, I smiled for real. "Yes," I said, "I have a plan." The plan started taking shape a week after my meeting with Mike. I sat in my kitchen with Arthur, and we mapped out every step, every detail. Every move had to be perfect. "The first thing you need to do," said Arthur while taking notes, "is legally protect your apartment. If Jessica is planning to make you sign a power of attorney, we need to get ahead of her." "How?" "You're going to create a trust, a revocable living trust. You will transfer ownership of the apartment to that trust. The beneficiaries will be Mia and Noah. You will continue living here until you die. But no one can sell or mortgage this property without the consent of a neutral trustee." I liked the idea. My apartment was safe. My grandkids would inherit it. Jessica couldn't touch it. "How long does that take?" I asked. 2 weeks if we do everything fast. I need you to gather all the property documents, deeds, property tax receipts, everything." That same afternoon I looked for the papers. They were kept in an old box under my bed. Yellowing deeds from 30 years ago. Receipts for every payment I had made. I bought this apartment alone. With my work. With my sweat. Nobody gave me anything free. And nobody was going to take it from me. While Arthur processed the trust, I focused on the second part of the plan. I needed more proof. I needed Jessica to confess. I needed to record her saying everything she planned. Mike gave me a small recording device. It was so small it fit in the palm of my hand. He taught me how to use it, how to hide it, how to activate it without anyone noticing. "You can put it in your purse," he explained, "or in your sweater pocket. It records up to 6 hours continuously. The audio quality is excellent." I practiced in my apartment. I recorded imaginary conversations. I listened to the recordings. It worked perfectly. Now I just needed the opportunity. That opportunity arrived 2 weeks later. Robert called me on a Tuesday night. "Mom, Jessica wants you to come for dinner on Saturday. She says we need to talk about something important." My heart raced. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. "What do you want to talk about?" I asked, feigning innocence. "I don't know exactly. Something about your well-being. About the future. The future. What an ironic word." "Sure. Son, I'll be there." On Saturday, I got ready with care. I put on a beige dress and a knitted sweater. In the sweater pocket, I hid the recording device. I activated it before leaving my apartment. I arrived at Robert's house at 7 in the evening. Jessica opened the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Eleanor, so good you came. Come in, come in." The house smelled of home-cooked food. Jessica had cooked. That was rare. She almost never cooked. This meant they wanted something from me. Robert was in the living room. He got up when he saw me and gave me an uncomfortable hug. The kids weren't there. That was also rare. "Where are Mia and Noah?" I asked. "We sent them to my mom's," replied Jessica. "We wanted this conversation to be just between adults." We sat at the table. Jessica served roast chicken with vegetables. Everything looked delicious. Everything felt calculated. We ate in silence for the first few minutes. I chewed slowly, observing, waiting. Finally, Jessica put her fork down on the plate and looked directly at me. Eleanor, Robert and I have been worried about you. There it was. The beginning. Worried? Why? I asked with the softest voice I could manage. Robert cleared his throat. Mom, you're already 70. You live alone in that apartment. Going upstairs every day can't be good for you. I'm fine, I said. I don't have problems going upstairs. Jessica smiled with that condescension I already knew too well. Eleanor, we know you say you're fine, but we see you. We see you tired. We see you slower. It's natural at your age. At your age? As if 70 years were synonymous with useless. Where are you going with this? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Robert looked at Jessica. She nodded, giving him permission to speak. Like always. Mom, we found a very nice place. It's a residence for seniors. It has gardens, activities, nurses available 24 hours. It would be much safer for you. A nursing home. They wanted to put me in a nursing home. I don't need nurses, I said. I am perfectly healthy. For now, Jessica intervened. But what happens if you fall? What happens if you get sick in the night and there's no one to help you? We work all day. We can't be on the lookout. Nobody had asked them to be on the lookout. But that didn't matter. And my apartment? I asked, although I knew perfectly well what was coming. Jessica leaned forward. Her eyes shined. That is another point we wanted to discuss. Your apartment is in an excellent area. It's worth a lot of money. If you sell it, you can pay for the residence for years and you'd still have money left over. Sell my apartment. I repeated the words as if I couldn't believe them. Think about it, Eleanor. That place is very big for you. It has 3 rooms you don't use. It's a waste. And the money from the sale would give you financial security. Robert added, We already spoke to a real estate agent, Mom. He says we can get between $120,000 and $130,000. It's a lot of money. $120,000. Exactly the figure I had read in Jessica's messages. You already spoke to an agent? I asked, without consulting me first. Jessica laughed. A light laugh, as if I had said something funny. We just wanted to have information, Eleanor, to be able to present you a complete proposal. A proposal. As if my life were a business deal. I don't want to sell my apartment, I said firmly. I bought that apartment. I paid for it. It's mine. Jessica's smile hardened. Eleanor, be reasonable. At your age, you need to think about what's practical. I am being practical. And the answer is no. Robert intervened with a soft voice. Mom, we just want the best for you. We don't want you to be alone. We don't want something to happen to you with no one nearby. I have neighbors. I have friends. I am not alone. Jessica let out an exaggerated sigh. Eleanor, your neighbors are as old as you are. What are they going to do if you fall? Call the ambulance while you bleed out? The words were cruel, designed to scare me, to make me feel vulnerable. But I was no longer vulnerable. I was no longer the woman who swallowed humiliations. I am not going to lose my apartment, I repeated. And I am not going to go to any residence. Jessica hit the table with the palm of her hand. The sound made me jump. For God's sake, Eleanor, why do you have to be so stubborn? We are trying to help you. I don't need your help. Of course you need it. You are old. You can't take care of yourself anymore. It is time you accept reality. Robert put a hand on Jessica's arm. Honey, calm down. But Jessica didn't calm down. She got up from the chair. She started pacing from one side of the kitchen to the other. You know what the problem is, Robert? That your mom has always been like this. Selfish. Thinking only of herself. Not caring that we have plans. Not caring that we need that money. There it was. The truth finally coming out. You need that money? I asked. For what? Jessica turned around. She looked at me with eyes full of frustration. To live. To give a better life to your grandkids. To not always be counting pennies. I gave you money, I said. I gave you more than $6,000 in the last few years. What happened to that money? Silence. Jessica looked at Robert. Robert looked at the floor. That money was used on necessary things, said Jessica finally. Like what? That is none of your business. It is my business if it is my money. Jessica laughed, a bitter laugh. Your money? Eleanor, you gave that money voluntarily. Nobody asked you for it. You wanted to act generous. Now you can't claim it back. I felt the rage rising in my chest, but I held it back. I needed her to keep talking. I needed her to say more. You're right, I said with a calm voice. I gave that money voluntarily. Because I love my family. Because I believed you needed it. And we needed it, said Robert weakly. You needed it to go on vacation to the beach? I asked. Because I saw the photos on Facebook. Jessica went rigid. We all need to rest sometimes. Sure. With my money? Enough, yelled Jessica. I'm not going to stay here listening to this. Robert, tell your mom to sign the power of attorney papers, or this is going to get ugly. Power of attorney. Finally, she had said it out loud. What papers? I asked. Robert took an envelope out of a drawer. He put it on the table. Mom, it's just a formality. A power of attorney would allow us to handle your legal affairs if one day you can't do it yourself. And you need that now? It's preventive, said Jessica. To be prepared. Prepared to sell my apartment. Prepared to lock me up. Prepared to erase me. I'm not going to sign that, I said. Jessica let out a dry laugh. Of course you're going to sign, sooner or later, because you have no other option. There are always options. Not at your age. Not when you depend on us. I do not depend on you. Jessica leaned over the table. Her face was inches from mine. Eleanor, listen to me well. You are going to sign those papers. You are going to sell that apartment, and you are going to go to that residence. Because if you don't do it voluntarily, we are going to prove that you are no longer in your right mind. We are going to get a judge to order it. Threats. Finally showing her true colors. I got up from the chair. I took my purse. My hand touched the recording device in my sweater pocket. It was still recording. I had recorded everything. I'm leaving, I said. Sit down, ordered Jessica. No. I walked toward the door. Robert followed me. Mom, wait. We can talk about this calmly. I turned around. I looked him in the eyes. Robert, you are my son. I gave you life. I raised you alone after your father died. I worked 3 jobs so you would have food and clothes. And now you are asking me to sign papers so your wife can steal everything I have. Robert looked down. He said nothing. Like always. I left that house and walked 3 blocks before allowing myself to shake. I sat on a park bench. I took out the recording device. I turned it off. I had everything. Every word. Every threat. Every confession. I called Arthur. How did it go? He asked. I have everything, I said. I have everything we need. The morning after that dinner, I woke up with a purpose clearer than ever. I sat on my bed and listened to the full recording. Every word from Jessica. Every cowardly silence from Robert. Everything was there, perfectly documented. I called Arthur at 9 in the morning. We met in his apartment an hour later. Mike was also there. Listen to this, I said, and played the recording. The 2 men remained silent while the voices filled the room. Jessica threatening, Robert allowing. My responses firm but controlled. When it finished, Arthur leaned back in his chair. This is gold, Eleanor. With this we can prove attempted coercion, financial abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud. Is it enough to protect me? I asked. It's enough to destroy them legally if you want, replied Mike. But you said you wanted something more. You said you wanted them to feel what you felt. He was right. Legal justice was important, but it wasn't enough. I had spent years feeling small, invisible, humiliated. I wanted them to feel it too. I need a plan, I said, something that exposes them in front of everyone, in front of the family, in front of their friends. I want everyone to know who they really are. Arthur nodded slowly. Are you thinking of a public event? Yes. But I need it to be at a moment where they can't escape, where everyone who matters is present. Mike leaned forward. What about Christmas? It's 3 months away. It's enough time to prepare everything. And I know your family always gathers for Christmas. The idea started to take shape in my mind. Christmas, the time of year where everyone pretends they are a perfect family, where Jessica invites her mother and sisters to show off, where Robert tries to be the cheerful host. Christmas dinner is always in my apartment, I said. It's tradition for years. Jessica hates coming here, but she does it because her family expects that gathering. Perfect, said Arthur. Then you organize the dinner like always. You invite everyone. And that day, when everyone is gathered, you present the evidence. How? Mike smiled. Remember the television they stole from you? The $8,000 one. I remembered it. How could I forget? Jessica has it at her mother's house, continued Mike. But I bet that for Christmas, she's going to want to bring it back. She's going to want to use it for the dinner, to look generous in front of her family. He was right. I knew Jessica. She would do exactly that. She would bring the television like it was a noble gesture, as if finally she was being good to the poor old mother-in-law. We can use that television to show everything, said Arthur. Videos, documents, recordings, everything projected on the big screen for everyone to see. The image filled me with dark satisfaction. Jessica sitting in my living room, surrounded by her family, watching all her lies projected on the very television she stole from me. I like it, I said, but I need more time. I need to make sure everything is perfect, that I have all the necessary evidence. The next 3 months were the strangest of my life. On the outside, everything seemed normal. I kept visiting my grandkids. I kept smiling when I saw Robert. I kept being the silent and obedient grandmother. But inside, I was at war. Arthur completed the trust. My apartment was now legally protected. Mia and Noah were the beneficiaries. Jessica could never touch it, no matter what she did. Mike kept investigating. He found more evidence. He found that Jessica had used my name to open a credit card the previous year. She had spent $3,000 and never paid it. My credit score was ruined, and I didn't even know it. He found emails where Jessica told her friends about her plans. The old lady isn't going to last much longer. When she goes, we keep everything. Each discovery was a blow, but it was also fuel. Fuel for what was to come. 1 month before Christmas, Robert called me. Mom, Jessica wants to know if we can do Christmas dinner at your apartment this year. Like always, I had to bite my tongue not to laugh. Of course she wanted to. She needed that stage for her annual performance of perfect daughter-in-law. Of course, I said with a sweet voice. It would be an honor. Great. And Mom, Jessica wants to bring the television, the one the kids gave you. She says she wants you to have it so you can enjoy it on Christmas. There it was. Exactly as Mike had predicted. How thoughtful of her, I said. And this time, I did let a small smile escape. 2 weeks before Christmas, I went to visit Mia and Noah. I took them for ice cream. We sat at an ice cream shop near their school. Grandma, are you okay? Asked Mia. You look different. Different how? I don't know. Stronger. Noah nodded. Yeah. Like something changed. These kids knew me better than anyone. They could see what others didn't see. Something did change, I admitted. But I can't tell you yet. I just need you to trust me. We always trust you, Grandma, said Noah. And I need you to know something else, I continued. No matter what happens at Christmas, you two are the most important thing to me. I love you more than anything in this world. And everything I am doing is to protect you too. Mia took my hand. Grandma, is something going to happen at Christmas? Yes, I said. Something is going to happen, but it's going to be okay. Trust me. The two nodded, although I saw concern in their eyes. 1 week before Christmas, Arthur, Mike, and I met for the last time. We reviewed all the material. We had the audio recordings of the dinner where Jessica threatened me, the bank statements showing the diverted money, the messages between Jessica and her mother planning to sell my apartment, the proof of the fraudulent credit card, the emails where she talked about me as if I were already dead, photographs of their vacations paid with my money. Everything was organized in a video presentation. Mike had edited everything professionally. It lasted exactly 18 minutes. 18 minutes. That would change everything. Are you sure you want to do this? Asked Arthur. Once you press that button, there is no going back. I had thought about that every day for 3 months. I had imagined that moment hundreds of times. I had weighed the consequences. I am sure, I said. more sure than I have been of anything in my life. Mike taught me how everything would work. The television would connect to a USB drive that I would hide. At the exact moment, I would take out the remote control and play the video. Simple, effective, devastating. The night before Christmas, I could almost not sleep. I stayed awake looking at the ceiling of my room, thinking about everything that was to come, thinking about everyone's words when they saw the truth. I thought about Robert, my son, the boy I had raised alone, the man who had chosen silence over his own mother. It hurt me what this would do to him, but he had made his decision years ago. Now I was making mine. I thought about Jessica, about her arrogance, about her cruelty disguised as concern, about all the years she had made me feel invisible. Tomorrow she would be the invisible one. She would be the humiliated one. I thought about my grandkids, about Mia and Noah. They deserved to know the truth. They deserved to see that their grandmother wasn't weak, that their grandmother could defend herself. I got out of bed at 5 in the morning. I took a long bath. I got ready with care. I put on a wine-colored dress I had bought especially for this occasion. I did my makeup. I did my hair. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the same one she had been 6 months ago. This woman had fire in her eyes. This woman had power. At 9 in the morning, I started cooking. I prepared the turkey. I made the stuffing. I cooked the potatoes. I baked the bread. Everything had to be perfect. This would be the last Christmas dinner this family would have together. It had to be memorable. At 2 in the afternoon, Robert arrived with the television. He carried it between him and a friend. They installed it in the living room, right in front of where everyone would sit. "Mom, Jessica says this is your Christmas gift," said Robert. "She wants you to know she always planned to give it back to you." Lies. But I smiled. How kind of her. When they went to get more things from the car, I took the USB drive out of my pocket. I plugged it into the television input. I hid it behind a plant. Nobody would see it, but I knew it was there, waiting. At 6 in the afternoon, everyone started to arrive. Jessica's mother, her 2 sisters, Robert, Jessica, the kids, Susan, my neighbor, whom I had invited as a witness. Everyone sat around the table. Everyone smiled. Everyone pretended we were a happy family. Jessica was radiant. She wore an emerald dress and expensive jewelry. She moved through my apartment as if it were hers. She served wine. She told jokes. She was the perfect hostess in my own home. We ate. We talked. We laughed. I observed everything as if I were watching a play, as if it weren't real. After dinner, when everyone was satisfied and relaxed, Jessica stood up with a glass of wine in her hand. "I want to make a toast," she said. Everyone raised their glasses. To family. To being together. And especially to my mother-in-law Eleanor, who opens her home to us every year. Everyone toasted. Everyone drank. I just smiled. Because I knew that in 5 minutes, that toast would sound very different. After the toast, everyone moved to the living room. Jessica insisted we sit down to watch family photos on the television. To remember the good times, she said with that perfect smile she had practiced for years. How ironic! She wanted to use my stolen television to show her fake version of our family. But I had other plans. I sat in my favorite armchair. The same armchair where I had spent entire nights crying. The same armchair where I had planned this moment. From here I had a perfect view of everyone. Jessica's mother was to her right, bragging about a new necklace. Jessica's sisters chatted about their recent vacations. Robert served more wine, always the silent waiter in his own family. Mia and Noah were sitting on the floor, near me. Noah looked at me with those eyes that always saw too much. He asked me in a low voice, "Grandma, are you nervous?" "No, sweetheart," I replied. "I am at peace." And it was true. After months of preparation, after years of humiliation, I was finally at peace. Because I knew that in a few minutes, everything would change. Jessica connected her phone to the television. She started swiping through photos. Past Christmases, birthdays, trips to the beach. In every photo, they smiled. They looked perfect. They looked happy. "Look at this one," said Jessica, pointing to a photo from 2 years ago. "It was when we went to Cancun. Remember? What a beautiful trip." Her mother nodded. You guys always know how to enjoy life. I remembered that trip. It was 2 months after I lent them $2,000 to fix the roof that had leaks. Leaks that never existed. Money that turned into piña coladas and beachfront hotels. Jessica kept swiping photos. Each one was another lie, another performance, another reminder of how they had used me for years. And this one is from Robert's birthday last year, she continued. Look at the restaurant where we ate. It was divine. I remembered that day too. They had told me it was an intimate family dinner. When I arrived, I discovered it was only for Jessica's friends. I wasn't invited. Robert called me afterward to apologize. It was a misunderstanding, Mom. It was always misunderstandings. After 20 minutes of photos, Jessica finally turned off her phone. Well, I think we've seen enough beautiful memories. There are more memories to see, I said. Everyone turned toward me. Jessica raised an eyebrow. Excuse me, Eleanor? I stood up from my armchair. I walked to where I had hidden the television remote control. I took it with a firm hand. I also prepared something to show tonight, I said. Something I think everyone should see. Jessica laughed nervously. Eleanor, I didn't know you knew how to use this technology. I learned many things in the last few months, I replied. Robert stood up. Mom, what is happening? Sit down, Robert. Everyone sit down. This won't take much time. There was something in my voice that made everyone obey. Even Jessica sat down, although her eyes showed confusion mixed with something like fear. I pointed the remote at the television. I pressed the button to change the input. The screen went black for a second. Then a title appeared in white letters. The Truth About Jessica Marquez. Jessica turned pale. What is this? I said simply. Something this family needs to see. Robert stood up again. Mom, turn that off. I don't know what you are doing, but sit down, Robert, I repeated. This time my voice was harder. Or I swear I am going to show your part too. He sat down. Everyone was silent now, even the kids had stopped moving. I pressed play. The screen showed the bank statements first. Numbers. Dates. Transfers from my account to Robert and Jessica's. $3,000 in March 2022. $2,000 in August 2022. $1,500 in January 2023. Next to each transfer appeared the reasons they had given me. Roof repair. Mia's medical emergency. Broken car. And then appeared the photos from their social media from those same dates. Cancun. Expensive restaurants. Designer clothes. Jewelry. Jessica's mother looked at her daughter. Jessica? This is ridiculous, said Jessica. But her voice was shaking. Eleanor, I don't know what you are trying to do, but… Silence, I said. There is still more. The video continued. Now it showed screenshots of messages. The messages between Jessica and her mother that Mike had gotten. I already convinced Robert that it's better to sell the old lady's apartment. Everyone in the room gasped. Jessica's mother brought a hand to her mouth. Robert stood up, staring at the screen as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. We can get at least $120,000. Jessica's sisters exchanged looks. One of them whispered, Oh my God. I already found a nursing home that costs $1,000 a month. We can pay for 3 years and keep the rest. Jessica got up from the sofa. Turn that off. You have no right. Sit down, I said, and there was so much ice in my voice that she obeyed. The video continued. Now it showed more messages. Messages where Jessica called me a burden, where she said I was senile, where she planned to declare me mentally incompetent. The old lady isn't going to last much longer. When she goes, we keep everything. Robert had tears in his eyes. Jessica, is this real? She didn't answer. She just watched the screen with horror. Then came the part with the audio recording, the scene from 3 months ago. My voice, clear and calm, asking about the power of attorney. Jessica's voice, full of threats. You are going to sign those papers. You are going to sell that apartment, and you are going to go to that residence. Because if you don't do it voluntarily, we are going to prove that you are no longer in your right mind. The room was in total silence. Only the audio from the television was heard. Jessica's voice threatening me. Robert's voice failing to defend me. My voice firm, refusing. When the audio finished, More information appeared. The credit card Jessica had opened in my name, the $3,000 spent. The ruined credit report. Jessica used my identity to open a credit card, I explained while everyone watched the screen. She spent $3,000 on clothes and restaurants. She never paid a cent. My credit is destroyed. Jessica's mother stood up. You did what? Jessica finally found her voice, but it was a different voice. Desperate. Mom, she is manipulating everything. She is taking things out of context. Context? Asked one of her sisters. What context makes it okay to steal from your mother-in-law? The video continued. Now it showed emails. Emails between Jessica and her friends. Emails where she mocked me, where she told how she manipulated me, where she planned my future without consulting me. The old lady is so easy to handle. I tell her it's for her own good, and she believes everything. Mia started to cry. Noah hugged her, but his eyes didn't stop looking at his mother with something I had never seen before. Disappointment. Rage. Robert approached Jessica. How could you? You knew, shouted Jessica. You knew about the plans. You agreed. Robert shook his head. I thought we were just worried about her. I didn't know you were going to do this. Liar. Jessica turned to me. You planned this. You set a trap for us. I just documented the truth, I replied. You did everything else. The video was coming to an end. The last part showed legal documents, the trust I had created, the transfer of my apartment to my grandkids' names, the restraining orders Arthur had prepared, and that only needed activating. On the screen appeared the final words. This apartment now belongs legally to a trust in the name of Mia and Noah Salas. It cannot be sold, mortgaged, or transferred without the consent of the neutral trustee. Any attempt at coercion or fraud will be reported to the appropriate authorities. The screen went black. Nobody spoke for what seemed like an eternity. Finally, Jessica's mother broke the silence. She stood up and looked at her daughter with an expression I had never seen on her. Shame. Disgust. Jessica, what have you done? Jessica opened her mouth, but no sound came out. One of her sisters got up too. I can't believe you are capable of this. Stealing from a 70-year-old woman? From your children's grandmother? You don't understand, shouted Jessica. We needed that money. We have debts. We have expenses. And that justifies fraud? Asked her other sister. That justifies opening credit cards with her identity? Jessica turned to Robert, looking for support. But Robert just looked at her as if he were seeing a stranger. Robert, pleaded Jessica. Say something. Defend me. Robert shook his head slowly. I can't defend this, Jessica. I can't. Jessica turned to me. Her eyes were full of tears now. Tears of rage, not regret. You destroyed my family, she said. No, I replied calmly. You destroyed your family. I just showed the truth. Another silence fell. Everyone looked at me now, waiting, wondering what would come next. I walked toward the center of the living room. I looked at every person present. My family, Jessica's friends, my grandkids. I have spent 8 years being invisible in my own family, I said. 8 years accepting humiliations. 8 years being treated as if my only function was to give money and then disappear. My voice cracked a little, but I continued. But I am no longer going to be invisible. I am no longer going to be silent. I am no longer going to allow anyone to treat me as if I had no value. I looked at Jessica directly. You stole my television. You stole my money. You tried to steal my home. But there is something you can never steal from me. My dignity. I took that back all by myself. The silence after my words was so dense I could feel it pressing against my chest. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Everyone simply looked at me, as if they had just seen a woman rise from the dead. Because in a way, that was exactly what had happened. Jessica's mother was the first to move. She stood up, took her purse, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned to her daughter. I didn't raise you for this, Jessica. I didn't raise you to be a thief. The words fell like stones. Jessica opened her mouth to answer, but her mother had already left, closing the door with a sharp slam that resonated through the whole apartment. One of Jessica's sisters stood up too. I can't stay here either. This is too much. The other sister followed her. But before leaving, she approached me. She took my hands. "Mrs. Eleanor, I am so sorry. If I had known what my sister was doing, I would have said something." I nodded. "I know, dear. This is not your fault." When they left, only Robert, Jessica, the kids, my neighbor Susan, and I remained. Jessica was standing in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, shaking. I don't know if it was from rage or fear. Maybe both. "Are you happy now?" she asked me with a venomous voice. "You destroyed my relationship with my family. Do you feel powerful?" "I feel free," I replied. "Free?" Jessica laughed, but it was a broken, hysterical laugh. "You just taught my whole family that I am a thief. You just taught my children that their mother is a monster." "I didn't teach them anything," I said calmly. "You taught them with your actions. I just showed them the truth you had hidden." Jessica turned to Robert. "And you? Are you going to stand there saying nothing? Are you going to let your mother humiliate me like this?" Robert had his gaze lost on the floor. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Jessica, you opened a credit card with my mother's name. You stole her money. You planned to sell her apartment without her consent." "For us," shouted Jessica. "I did everything for us. For our family. Because you don't earn enough. Because we needed money." "Then we should have worked more," replied Robert. "We should have made sacrifices. Not steal from my mother. Your mother has more than she needs. She lives alone in a 3-bedroom apartment. Why does she need all that space?" "Because it is hers," said Robert, and this time his voice was firmer. "Because she paid for it with her work. Because she earned it." Jessica looked at him as if she didn't recognize him. "Now you're going to take her side? After everything we planned together." "I never planned to steal from her, Jessica," I thought. "I thought we were just worried about her well-being." "Liar, you knew exactly what we were doing." Robert finally looked up. There were tears in his eyes. "You're right, I knew, and that's why I am just as guilty as you." He turned to me. He walked to where I was and knelt in front of me. A 42-year-old man kneeling like a child. "Mom, forgive me. Forgive me for not defending you. Forgive me for being such a coward. Forgive me for choosing comfort over truth." I looked at my son. This man I had raised alone. This man who had learned to be invisible in his own life. This man who had failed when I needed him most. I put a hand on his head. "Robert, I forgive you, but forgiving you doesn't mean I will forget. And it doesn't mean things are going to go back to how they were before." "I know," he sobbed. "I know, and I accept it." Mia approached me. Her face was full of tears. "Grandma, I am so sorry. I'm sorry I didn't see what Mom was doing." I hugged her tight. "You have nothing to apologize for, my love. None of this is your fault." Noah also approached. He said nothing, just joined the hug. The 3 of us remained like that, united, while the world around us crumbled. Jessica watched the scene with eyes full of hate. Perfect. Simply perfect. Now, I am the villain, and you are the happy family. I separated from my grandkids and looked directly at her. "Jessica, you made your choices. For years you chose the lie. You chose deceit. You chose to see yourself as a victim, instead of taking responsibility. And what did you choose?" She spat. "Did you choose revenge? Did you choose to destroy me in front of everyone?" "I chose dignity," I replied. "I chose truth. I chose to stop being invisible." Jessica shook her head. "This doesn't end here. I'm going to get a lawyer. I'm going to prove those recordings are illegal. I'm going to." "The recordings are completely legal," interrupted Arthur, who had been silent until now. Everyone turned to look at him. In this state, only one party's consent is needed to record a conversation. Eleanor had every right to record what she wanted in her own home. Jessica paled. "Who are you?" "Arthur Henderson, lawyer and Eleanor's neighbor. And if you decide to proceed legally against her, I can assure you that you are not going to win. We have solid documentation of fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit financial abuse against an elderly person." "Financial abuse." Jessica laughed bitterly. "She has more money than she needs." "That doesn't give you the right to steal it," said Arthur with a cold voice. "And if you want this to turn into a criminal case, go ahead. But I warn you that the consequences will be much worse for you than for Eleanor." Jessica looked at Robert, looking for support. But Robert just shook his head, defeated. "Let's go," said Jessica finally. "Robert, get your things. We're leaving." Robert stood up slowly. He looked at his children, then he looked at me. "The kids can stay if they want," he said in a low voice. Mia and Noah exchanged looks. Then Mia spoke. "We want to stay with Grandma tonight." Jessica turned sharply. "What?" "We want to stay here," repeated Noah. "You are coming with me now," ordered Jessica. "No," said Mia with a firm voice. "We aren't going." Jessica walked toward her children. But I stepped in between. I said nothing. I just stood between her and my grandkids. Jessica looked at me with so much hate I could feel it burning. "This doesn't end here, old woman. I swear this doesn't end here." "Yes, it does," I said calmly. "It ends exactly here." Jessica took her purse and left the apartment, slamming the door. Robert looked at me one last time before following her. In his eyes, I saw something I had never seen before. Respect. Maybe even admiration. When the door closed, I let myself fall onto the sofa. My whole body was shaking. The adrenaline that had sustained me for the last hour was finally dissipating. Susan approached and put a hand on my shoulder. "Eleanor, you were incredible." "I feel destroyed," I admitted. "You are liberated," she corrected. "There is a difference." Mia and Noah sat on either side of me. The three of us remained in silence for a long while. Outside, the city celebrated Christmas. Fireworks exploded in the distance. People laughed. Music played. And in here, in my small apartment, something had ended. A complete era of my life had come to an end. "Grandma," said Mia finally, "what is going to happen now?" "I don't know, my love," I answered honestly. "But I know we are going to be okay." "Are Mom and Dad going to divorce?" asked Noah. "I don't know. That is a decision they have to make." "Can we keep seeing you?" asked Mia with a small voice. I hugged her tighter. "Always. You can always see me. Whatever happens with your parents, I am always going to be here for you." Noah looked at me with those wise eyes he had. "Grandma, why did you wait so long? Why didn't you say anything before?" It was a good question. A question I had asked myself hundreds of times. "Because I was afraid," I admitted. "I was afraid of losing my family. I was afraid of being left alone. I was afraid that if I spoke, things would get worse." "And now?" he asked. "Now I know that silence hurts more than the truth. Now I know that being alone with dignity is better than being accompanied with humiliation." Mia rested her head on my shoulder. "I am proud of you, Grandma." Those words broke me in a way none of Jessica's cruelties had managed. I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. I cried for everything I had lost. I cried for everything I had endured. I cried for the woman I had been and for the woman I had become. But I also cried of relief because finally, after so many years, I had said enough. I had drawn a line. I had recovered my voice. That night, Mia and Noah slept in the guest rooms Jessica always said I didn't need. Susan went to her apartment after making sure I was okay. I stayed alone in the living room, looking at the turned-off television, the television that had been the trigger for all this. The $8,000 television that my grandkids bought with love and that Jessica stole with greed. Now it was back in my house. But it didn't matter anymore, because I had learned that objects have no real value. What has value is dignity, respect, truth. I stood up and went to my room. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back was tired. She had deep wrinkles. She had gray hair. She had 70 years of life marked in every line of her face. But she also had something new. She had strength in her eyes. She had determination in her jaw. She had power in her posture. This woman was no longer invisible. This woman had fought for herself. And this woman had won. The days after Christmas were strange. Robert called me 3 times. I didn't answer the first 2. On the third, I answered, "Mom, we need to talk. Talk. Not on the phone. Please. Can I come see you?" I accepted. He came 2 days later. He looked haggard. He had lost weight. He had deep bags under his eyes. We sat in the kitchen. I served him coffee. Neither of us touched it. "Jessica left," he said finally. She went to her mother's house. She says she needs time to think. I said nothing. I just waited. The kids are with me. Well, half the time. The other half, they want to be here with you. They can be here whenever they want, I said. Robert nodded. He rubbed his face with his hands. Mom, I was a coward. For years, I was a coward. I know. I didn't defend you when I should have. I let Jessica treat you as if you didn't matter. I let her steal from you. I let her plan to destroy your life. I know, I repeated. Robert looked up. He had tears in his eyes. How can you be so calm? How can you look at me without hating me? Because I already spent my rage, I replied. I already did what I had to do. Now all that's left is deciding what's next. What is next for us? I took a sip of coffee. It was cold. That depends on you, Robert. I already made my decisions. I already protected my future. I already recovered my dignity. Now you have to decide what kind of man you want to be. I want to be better, he said. I want to be the son you deserve to have. Then be better. Not with words. With actions. Robert nodded. He got up to leave. At the door, he turned back. The trust you created. The one that leaves the apartment to the kids. It was brilliant. It was necessary. Jessica is furious. She says she is going to fight legally. Let her fight. She won't win. Robert smiled sadly. I never saw you coming, Mom. I never thought you were capable of all this. Me neither, I admitted. But it turns out when you get pushed enough, you discover what you are made of. After he left, I called Arthur. We met in his apartment that same afternoon. Jessica hired a lawyer, he informed me. She is trying to contest the trust. She says you created it under duress, that you weren't in your right mind. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Duress? She accuses me of duress. The irony escapes no one, said Arthur. But we have to take this seriously. I need you to get a psychological evaluation. We need to prove you are completely sane and that you made these decisions with mental clarity. I did the evaluation a week later. A psychologist asked me questions for 2 hours. He asked me to solve problems, to remember dates, to explain my decisions. At the end, he shook my hand. Mrs. Eleanor, you are more lucid than most 30-year-olds I see. The report arrived 3 days later. Arthur read it and smiled. This is perfect. With this, any argument of mental incapacity is destroyed. But Jessica didn't give up. Her lawyer sent letters threatening lawsuits, demanding compensation for emotional distress, asking to annul the trust. Arthur answered every letter with solid documentation. The recordings, the bank statements, the proof of fraud. Every time Jessica attacked, we counterattacked with irrefutable evidence. Finally, 2 months after Christmas, Jessica's lawyer called Arthur. My client is willing to reach an agreement. What kind of agreement? Asked Arthur. She withdraws all lawsuits against Mrs. Eleanor. In exchange, Mrs. Eleanor does not press criminal charges for the credit card fraud. Arthur looked at me. I thought for a moment. I accept, I said, but with an additional condition. Which one? Jessica signs a document where she renounces any right over my property, my assets, and my future. And she accepts that my grandkids can visit me whenever they want without her interference. The lawyer took the proposal to Jessica. 2 days later, she signed. When Arthur showed me the signed document, I felt something strange. It wasn't victory. It wasn't joy. It was closure. It's over, I said. It's over, confirmed Arthur. That night, Mia and Noah came to have dinner. I told them about the agreement. So Mom can't bother you anymore? Asked Mia. Not legally, I replied. And we can keep coming. Always. Noah hugged me. Grandma, you are the bravest person I know. Those words filled me with something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Pride in myself. The weeks passed. Life found a new rhythm. The grandkids visited me 3 times a week. Robert came on Sundays. We drank coffee. We talked. Slowly, we rebuilt something. It wasn't what we had before. It was something different. Something more honest. Jessica never came back to my apartment. I saw her sometimes on the street, when she picked up the kids. We looked at each other. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. One day, 3 months after everything, Susan knocked on my door. "Eleanor, there is something I want to show you." She took me to her apartment. On her computer, she showed me an article from a local blog. The headline said, "70-year-old woman defends her dignity against family abuse." Someone had told my story. Not with names, but with enough details that anyone who was at that Christmas dinner would know who they were talking about. I read the full article. It talked about financial abuse against the elderly, about the importance of fighting back, about never being too old to recover your power. The comments were full of women telling similar stories, women who had been silenced, women who had been robbed, women who had found their voice. "You are an inspiration," said Susan. I didn't feel like an inspiration. I felt like a survivor. But maybe that was the same thing. That night, I sat in my armchair. I looked around my apartment, this place I had fought so hard to protect, this place I now knew my grandkids would inherit. I thought about everything that had happened, about everything I had lost, about everything I had gained. I had lost the illusion of a perfect family, but I had gained the truth. I had lost the comfort of silence, but I had gained the power of my voice. I had lost years being invisible, but I had gained the rest of my life being seen. And that, I decided, was a fair trade. 6 months after that Christmas, I woke up in my apartment and realized something strange. For the first time in years, I didn't feel that weight in my chest. That constant anxiety that accompanied me every morning had disappeared. I got up, made coffee, and sat by the window. Outside, the city was waking up. People walked to their jobs, kids went to school, life went on. And mine did too. Mia and Noah now lived with me half the week. Robert and Jessica had officially separated. The divorce was in process. The kids handled it better than I expected. Maybe because finally there was honesty in the family. Maybe because they no longer had to pretend everything was okay. Robert had changed. He arrived punctual when he picked up the kids. He asked me how I was. He listened to me when I spoke. Small changes, but real changes. One afternoon he told me, "Mom, I've been going to therapy." Yes. The therapist asked me why I let Jessica treat you like that for years. I told him I didn't know. But I did know. I was afraid of being alone. I was afraid that if I confronted her, she would leave me. "And now?" I asked. "Now I understand that being alone is better than being accompanied by lies." I smiled. "It took me 70 years to learn that." "You were always braver than I will ever be," he said. I didn't answer, because I knew it wasn't true. I hadn't been brave for years. I had been a coward. I had been silent. I had been invisible. Bravery arrived when I no longer had anything to lose. Arthur became a close friend. We had dinner together once a week. Sometimes Susan came too. The three of us, survivors of different battles, sharing stories and laughs. One night, Arthur asked me, "Do you regret anything?" I thought about the question. I thought about everything that had happened. About the public humiliation I had caused. About the family I had fractured. About the truth I had exposed. "I don't regret having spoken," I said finally. "But I regret having waited so long." "What would you tell the Eleanor of 8 years ago?" asked Susan. "I would tell her that her silence doesn't protect her. I would tell her that being kind doesn't mean being weak. I would tell her that she has the right to defend herself." Mia and Noah flourished living with me. Mia started getting better grades. Noah joined the school soccer team. The two smiled more, talked more, were more themselves. One afternoon, Mia found me looking at the turned-off television. "Grandma, why do you never use it?" "I don't need it," I replied. "But we worked so hard to buy it for you." I took her hand. "My love, that television already served its purpose. It taught me something more valuable than any show could show me." "What did it teach you?" "It taught me that there are things worth fighting for. It taught me that my dignity matters. It taught me that it's never too late to say enough." Mia rested her head on my shoulder. "When I grow up, I want to be like you. Be better than me," I said. "Don't wait 70 years to find your voice." The months passed. Summer arrived. I decided to do something I had never done, something I always wanted to do, but never allowed myself. I hired someone to paint my apartment. I chose new colors: light beige for the living room, soft green for my room, pale yellow for the grandkids' rooms. I bought new furniture, not expensive, but mine, chosen by me, not inherited, not gifted out of obligation. Mine. I hung new photos on the walls, photos of Mia and Noah, photos of Susan and me in the park, photos of real happy moments, not forced smiles. When I finished, the apartment felt different. It felt like a home. My home. One July afternoon, while the grandkids played in the living room, the doorbell rang. It was Robert. He brought flowers. Flowers? I asked, surprised. It's your birthday next week, he said. You turn 71. I want to do something special. I don't need anything special. I know, but I need to do it. I need to show you that I am trying, that I want to be better. I let him in. We sat in the kitchen. The kids came to say hello and then went back to their games. Mom, can I ask you something? Sure. How did you know it was the moment? How did you know it was time to act? I thought about the question. I thought about that moment at dinner, when Jessica threatened me. I thought about all the moments before that one, all the silences, all the humiliations. It wasn't a single moment, I said. It was the accumulation of years. But there was an instant where something simply broke. And when it broke, I realized I could no longer keep being who I had been. I had to choose. I could stay broken and silent, or I could break everything and rebuild myself. And was it worth it? I looked around. My renovated apartment, my grandkids playing happily, my son sitting in front of me, finally seeing me for real. Yes, I said. It was worth every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of fear. It was worth it. Robert nodded. He had tears in his eyes. I am proud of you, Mom. Those words, coming from him, meant more than I could express. The week of my birthday, Mia and Noah woke me up early. They had prepared breakfast: scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, everything made with clumsy adolescent love. Happy birthday, Grandma, they said in unison. We ate together. We laughed. We talked about everything and nothing. It was simple. It was perfect. That afternoon, Robert came with a cake. Susan and Arthur arrived too. We sang. I blew out the candles. I made a wish. What did you wish for? Asked Noah. I can't say, or it won't come true. Grandma, you already have everything you need, said Mia. What more could you ask for? I smiled, because she was right. I already had everything I needed. But my wish wasn't for me. My wish was for all the women still in silence, for all the grandmothers being invisible, for all those who believed it was already too late. My wish was that they find their voice like I found mine. That night, after everyone left, I sat in my armchair. I looked at the television that had caused all this. The $8,000 television that represented so much more than technology. It represented love. It represented betrayal. It represented the moment I finally said enough. I took the remote control. I turned it on for the first time in months. The screen lit up, and there, reflected in the black screen before the image appeared, I saw my own face. I saw a 71-year-old woman. I saw wrinkles and gray hair. I saw the weight of the years. But I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw dignity. I saw power. I saw a woman who had found her voice. A woman who had fought for herself. A woman who had won. I stood up and turned off the television. I no longer needed to see my reflection to know who I was. I went to my room. I opened the drawer where I kept the envelope with all the evidence. The recordings, the documents, the screenshots. I took them all out. I looked at them one last time. And then I did something I hadn't planned. I tore them up, one by one. I made them into small pieces and threw them in the trash. I no longer needed them. They had already served their purpose. I no longer needed to cling to the past. I no longer needed the proof of what I had survived, because I was the proof. Me, standing, free, with a voice. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time before going to bed. My name is Eleanor, I said out loud. I am 71 years old, and my story is just beginning." The words resonated in the empty room. But they weren't empty. They were full of promise, full of future, full of possibility. I lay down. I closed my eyes. And for the first time in years, I slept deeply and without fear. Because finally I had learned the most important lesson of my life. It is never too late to recover your power. It is never too late to tell the truth. It is never too late to start over. And I, Eleanor, was just getting started.